everybody, welcome to Scary Story Friday, True Scary Story Friday. Welcome my new subscribers, my older subscribers, my faithful subscribers, and everybody else in between. So glad you could join me for another Friday for a scary story. So this scary story took place about in the 1990s, and it was October, and I was living at my mom's house, and my niece lived there. We raised her, me and my mom, and Halloween was always a big holiday for us. We decorated the whole yard, and it looked so beautiful. And that night, that day was like a kind of little windy, but not too bad, but it was really cold. And at my mom's house, she had a real long driveway, and since it was cold and she didn't want us to be opening the door back and forth and bothering the dogs and everything, she parked the car in the driveway up by where our gates were, and we were going to give candy there. So me and my niece was about, I'd say she was about 13 at the time, and me and her were sitting in the car, and we had the big bowl of candy, and we had costumes on and everything, enjoying the night. And we had a bunch. We always had a bunch of kids because we lived across the street from a school, and they knew that this house we always gave the big candy bars. So we had a bunch of kids all night, and it was like about 8 o'clock, and it started slowing down, and it became a little more breezy and more cold, and I told my niece, well, by 9 o'clock, we'll just put everything away and go inside. So we got a few more kids and everything. We were sitting in the car, and from my peripheral vision, I see a really big, tall man, kind of dressed like Michael Myers. And he had the mask and everything, and I was like, that's weird. He was all by himself. It was really quiet already. There was hardly no kids out anymore. If there was any, I didn't see any. And I saw him walking from the side street, and he turned towards our house. You know, our house had lights and a bunch of decorations and stuffed bodies like Jason and stuff like that, and we had a real scary ghost and stuff like that. So anyway, I see him walking, and by our neighbor's house next to us, they had a big wooden fence, so you really couldn't see anybody coming down our street if they were walking on the sidewalk. So I was like, oh, it took a little while. So I see like the top of his head, because he was really tall, and that fence was like 6 feet, so you could see the top of his head. And he came, and he was walking really slow, and I was like, that's really weird to see somebody walking, you know, like this on Halloween with no kids, a grown man. And so I told my niece, let's lock the doors, you know, and if something happens, we'll just press on the horn. So at that time, you know, we didn't really have any cell phones or anything. We had a house phone and stuff. So we were about a good, I'd say 20 to 30 feet away from the house, you know, because we were in the car. And so this man comes walking, steps in front of the gate, and just stands there. And I was like, okay. It was like really, really weird, really tense, really scary and spooky. Everything, every weird emotion that you can think of, that's what we were feeling. I had the chills. It was really weird. And he stood there for, I'd say, about a minute or two. Just stood there, just staring. I was like, okay, if he comes to the car, I am going to press on the horn, and I'm not going to stop till he leaves, or till my mom comes out, and I'll tell her to call the cops and lock the door. And so, no, he just stood there, and he was fiddling with something in his pocket, and I didn't know what it was, if he was reaching for a knife or a gun or what. And then he turns down facing the street and keeps walking. And I was like, wow. And then I told my niece, open the door and run into the house. I told her, run into the house. So she ran into the house. I ran up to the gate, locked it, and chained it. and all the dogs started barking all of a sudden. It was really quiet at that moment, and then all the dogs started barking and barking and barking. And I was like, that was so strange, you know, and I ran into the house, locked the doors, and we called the cops. And they came, and we told them what happened, and they looked all over the neighborhood. They couldn't find anybody fitting that description. It was already about 9:30 when the cops came back to our house. And they said, you know, if you see him again, call us, and whatever. So we were like, okay. So that night I went to bed, and my room was a converted, it used to be a porch, but we converted it into a bedroom, and it had like a lot of picture windows all over it. And that night the dogs were barking along everything, and I had brought in a bunch of our Halloween decorations so nobody would steal them, and to get early packing up on the Halloween stuff. So I was in bed, you know, and I wasn't feeling right, so I put my little light on next to my bed, and I was reading a book. And all of a sudden, I used to have a little dachshund, and he goes to, because I had one of those storm doors on my door, plus we had a wrought iron door in back of that. So it was all glass, you know, so I had a shade. So I looked out the shade because my little dachshund started barking. And I was like, well, maybe he needs to go outside and use the bathroom. So I looked outside, and I saw that man across the street at the school, and he was swinging on a swing. And I was like, oh my God, it was so weird. I was like, oh my God. So I got up right away, got the phone, and called the cops. And by the time the cops came, he was already gone again. So my mom goes, what's going on? And I told her what happened, and we went out there and looked in the yard, and at the time my mom didn't have grass yet, and her yard was all dirt, but we always kept it neat. It was free of weeds and everything, and the trees were trimmed and everything. And we had a little swing out there for my niece, and we had some other, like some lawn chairs and stuff. And right there in front of my bedroom, there was footsteps on the dirt, and it was a big foot, like a workbook, like a work boot foot. And I told my mom, look at that, and it looked like he had been walking from the kitchen window to my bedroom to the living room window and back. And so when the cops came back to the house, we showed him the footsteps and everything, and he was like, well, be careful and make sure you keep an eye out and all this stuff. But after that happened, I never saw him again. I never saw footprints or anything again that I noticed. And I hope to never ever see him again. That was a long time ago, but it still happened. It was still creepy, and I'll never forget that. And I don't know if maybe he was trying the door handles, and that's why my little dog started barking, or he was trying to get into a window, or what he was trying to do. I do not know. And so, yeah, that's one of my scary encounters. It's not like paranormal, but it's still scary. And just remember to always make sure your doors and windows are locked before you go to bed. And I'm so glad you could join me for another Scary Story Friday, True Scary Story Friday. And I will catch you guys later. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe. And remember, don't forget to sleep with the lights on, because you never know who or what followed you home. Good night. Hi everybody, welcome to Scary Story Friday, True Scary Story Friday.